Welcome to the first video about managing the time aspect of your projects. In this video, we will introduce the steps of scheduling a project and look at a basic network diagram. There are several videos about scheduling. First of all, what do we mean by project scheduling? Project scheduling is the activity that we carry out to identify what needs to be done to complete the project, when we plan for it to happen, and who will do the task. We can use scheduling to try and predict how long a project will take to finish. Later on, we can also use scheduling to help us work out how to allocate additional resources if we want to finish the project quicker. I will expand on the when and the who later in this video. Time is one of the hardest aspects of your project to control and is often used as an indicator of project success. The PMI Pulse of the Profession from 2017, which is an annual survey of project organisations, reports that only 49% of projects finished within their initial duration estimates, and that 26% of projects that failed were caused by inaccurate initial time estimates. So we can see how finishing a project on time is linked to project success or failure. There are several reasons for scheduling a project before it starts. We need to be able to predict when a project will be completed. Clients need to know when they'll be able to use the product you're making. It impacts on their business or their personal lives. Some projects are known as time critical, where the priority out of time, cost and quality is time. For example, a birthday party, which you would not want to have completing on the wrong date. Most projects are scheduled from the start, but with time-critical projects, we schedule them backwards from the end. We also need to be able to let people know when we want them to complete their tasks, especially when these people are subcontractors who have lots of other work as well. In the implementation phase, we can use a comprehensive schedule to monitor our progress. And a good schedule clearly shows how all the pieces of a project fit together. It can make the activities easy to understand and therefore easier to manage. There are several steps in scheduling a project. The first step is to define the activities that need to be done. This involves identifying and documenting the activities required to be performed in order to produce the deliverables of the project. The output of this step is known as a work breakdown structure. We looked at the development of a work breakdown structure in an earlier video, and you might want to go back and review that before you carry on with this video. The WBS creates a comprehensive list of all the activities of a project, and you can usually find a description of each activity, also called a scope of works description or an activity definition table. This will be helpful in specifically telling contractors and subcontractors how you expect various activities to be completed. As part of the activity definition, you might also list attributes of activities, which means information like who is going to do each activity and where the activity is to be carried out. Finally, the definition of the activities can include a list of milestones. Remember those? Those occur at key points in the project, usually at the end of a phase or a major activity, and they don't have a duration. Step 2 is sequencing the activities. You need to sequence the project activities in a logical order of implementation. At this stage in your career, you may not have much idea about the logical sequence of activities. Don't worry, this knowledge will come from courses in your degree and from experience at work. For now, just use common sense. For example, you wouldn't lay a carpet in a house if the roof wasn't on, because the carpet would be exposed to the elements. We shower before we put clothes on for obvious reasons, and we buy food before we cook it, before we eat it. Taking the logical sequencing of activities one step further, we talk about dependent relationships between activities. In other words, which activities must be completed in order for subsequent activities to take place. These are more than logical, they are necessary. Activity sequencing can lead us to information such as predecessors, which is the activity that comes before the current one, and successors, the activity that comes after the current one. Here, collecting the details is the current activity, repeating the order is the predecessor, and giving the order to the kitchen is the successor. The output of this step, the thing that you're making from sequencing the activities, is called a network diagram, and that's what's shown here. A network diagram is a graphical representation of the sequence of activities and the logical relationships between them. Here you can see a network diagram on which the activities are represented by boxes and the logical relationship between them is shown by arrows. The third step in scheduling a project is estimating the duration of each activity you have identified. We can do this with several techniques. One is called historical evidence for the same or similar activities. That is, asking how long did this activity take the last time you did it. Bear in mind that conditions are rarely the same, and so the activity on your project might take longer or shorter than the same activity on a different project. Another consideration is how long is it since you did the activity? Has technology changed since the last time this activity was done? And so now the equipment is bigger or better or faster. Finally, consider how many resources you had working on the activity last time, and if you have more or less resources this time, making the duration for that activity shorter or longer. There's also expert judgment. One of the best people to tell you how long an activity will take is the person who will be doing the activity, the expert. Asking your contractor or subcontractor for a duration estimate has several positive outcomes. Firstly, by asking them for their opinion and valuing their answer, they are likely to feel more engaged with the project. Also, when someone gives you an estimated duration, they make an informal commitment to do the activity in that duration. So it's much more effective management and good leadership to ask someone how long it will take rather than dictate how long it will take. So expert judgment is a good way to estimate activity duration if you can. For initial duration estimates, historical evidence combined with expert judgment is an excellent start. There used to be another estimating technique called work method study. This involved observing how long it took for a similar activity to be completed, and then applying that duration to your task. It wasn't the most reliable method, because if you think about how you behave when you are doing something and someone comes along and watches you, do you speed up or slow down? Do you take more care or do you hurry up? So we stopped using work method study because it was observed that people don't take breaks when they're being watched, and it appeared that the activities were being done quicker than usual. My advice, stick to asking the person who will do the job or your historical evidence. A note about contingency time. A contingency is an amount of a resource that you hold in reserve for when something doesn't go to plan. Activities can be allocated a duration and then an additional contingency time like a buffer. You might decide that cooking dinner will take 1 hour, but you'll allow 1 hour and 15 minutes. The 15 minutes is your contingency. We have contingency in time estimates, and we also have contingencies in our budget. Once the duration of each activity has been estimated, the next step is to estimate the resources for each activity. For this, you are working out how many resources you need to complete the activity in the time allowed. By resources, we mean people and equipment. In this case, it might be a car, a phone, an oven, whatever resources or equipment is required for that particular activity. It's important to know what resources you need for each activity so you can plan to have those resources available. When we add time to our program schedule, you'll be able to identify not only what resources you need, but also when you need them, and you can plan to have them there ready to use. For some activities, you may not need to allocate resources because the contractor doing that activity will bring the resources themselves. But for other activities, you will need to know in advance how many people, computers, cars, wheelbarrows, etc. you need to get the task done in that time. When we allocate resources, we call primary resources those that are available to you now. Secondary resources are those that are available in the future. The last step is the project duration. This means adding up the durations of each activity in the sequence of activities for your project. On this network diagram, you can see I've added 1 minute for each of the activities, except 4 minutes for mixing the dough, 3 minutes for placing toppings, and then 1 minute for the other things as well. I've also added 10 minutes of delay in between activity 2.3 and 2.4. Because if we didn't have 10 minutes there, we would take something in the oven and then we would take it straight out again. So we need to allocate 10 minutes of time to the relationship between 2.3 and 2.4. You'll learn more about this in a later course. So the total project duration from activities 1.1 to 2.5 on this project is 25 minutes. So that's an introduction to project scheduling. We've looked at the steps involved in project scheduling, from defining activities all the way through to calculating the project duration. And along the way, I've introduced the concepts of a network diagram, what resources are, and how a contingency works. Don't forget to have a look at the review questions and bring your answers to the tutorial. In the next video, we'll be looking at turning the information we've created so far into a Gantt chart. See you then.